Dr. Kemi Health. It's Saturday, the 29th of March, 2025. Let's talk about thyme. Thyme is a herb and it's used to cook all kinds of dishes, and people also use it for medicinal purposes. Every single herb has a use for the human body. Thyme is very popular in Nigeria for cooking Niger jollof. Thyme and bay leaves are the secret to Niger jollof. Now, if you go to Ghana and you see the Ghana jollof, they don't use thyme. They do use bay leaf, but that's the ingredient that separates Ghana jollof from Nigerian jollof. A lot of us in Nigeria use thyme to cook stews and soups, especially when we're doing something called atadidi, fried pepper sauce. We can fry pepper sauce. I can use it for stews. We can use it for corned beef stew, sardine stew. We can use it for, name it. But when you put thyme in all these fried pepper sauces, it lifts the flavor out. But let's talk about the ugly side of thyme. It can cause problems with bleeding and blood clotting. There is something called anticoagulant. Anticoagulants are plants or drugs that stops blood from clotting and killing us. There are drugs that are called anticoagulant drugs, which prevent blood clotting in cases of DVT, deep vein thrombosis, when there is a vein in the leg and the blood clots and moves to the lung. Pulmonary embolism. When blood clots in the lungs, it can kill you. That's why DVT is so important, because if you have a blood clot in your leg, it can actually travel all the way to the lungs and kill you. So anticoagulants are used if they feel that that patient needs it to prevent blood clotting. Also, strokes, cerebrovascular accidents. Some people have heart attack, they have vascular issues, and they actually survive all those, and then they have a stroke. If they have a bad stroke, they can't talk. Many can't walk. Many can't do simple things like feeding themselves and all. A lot of the brain activity is messed up. Why am I telling you all this? In layman terms, thyme is being smoked and abused by young people. It's the latest herb they're smoking. I sent a message to the NDLEA on this, and I'm going to send them this video as well. Remember what I said about cannabis, marijuana. Anytime you see marijuana in its natural form, it has medicinal uses. It's used to stimulate appetites in HIV and AIDS patients who are wasted, especially those with the AIDS disease themselves. They can't eat and they look very thin and wasted. It stimulates their appetite and allows them to have meals. Some cancer patients go through chemotherapy, and those drugs are very invasive. They have very bad side effects. One of those side effects is nausea, and the nausea is just like super nausea, not your regular nausea that you can cure with Coke or ginger or medicine. These are very bad nausea. Marijuana in its natural form cures that nausea due to chemotherapy side effects. King Charles of the UK had some kind of cancer treatment side effect this week and canceled all engagements. It was everywhere in the news. I don't know whether it was the nausea from the chemo drug or what the chemo drug was even. It could be any drug in the chemo range. But marijuana, the minute you burn it, you kill all the medicinal properties. The minute you burn it, and burning it means smoking it, all the medicinal properties are gone. Then it becomes a hallucinogen and eventually damages your life, your brain, as time goes on. Back to thyme. Young people are smoking thyme. Thyme is an anticoagulant. It's a slow one. It slowly prevents blood clots. What happens if you smoke thyme? Remember what I discussed about marijuana? Now look at thyme. When you smoke thyme, you damage it. All the properties it has medicinally will not work anymore. if you have something that's a slow anticoagulant and you actually stop the anticoagulant properties, you might end up bleeding. Yeah. What happens if somebody's been smoking thyme all the time? One day they're bleeding, the bleeding doesn't stop. Do you know when you're going to bleed? None of us know. If you go out the door, they shoot you out there. Whether you were shot on purpose or a stray bullet or just shot, period, you're going to bleed. We don't know when we're going to bleed. You go to that kitchen there, down the next room there, and I want to make a salad for myself, and I'm cutting onions, I'm cutting cucumber, I'm cutting, and I'm cutting, but then I cut myself. A nice big cut in my thumb. Starts bleeding, blood everywhere. Thank God I'm making the salad for myself and not for guests. I live alone. And let's look at it this way. I'm bleeding. I quickly run away from the salad, right? And I run water through the bleeding. Put a towel around it, paper tissue. Press force on it so that the bleeding can stop. And at the end of the day, it stops a little. Then I take peroxide or alcohol and I wipe it. It continues stopping. On a normal basis, I go outside and get the Ephedrine. Ephedrine is, some people say Ephedrine is thyme, but Ephedrine is an anticoagulant. It's a plant. Okay, I've just never known the English word for it, but some people are saying it's actually thyme. I don't think it's thyme, but I take this plant, I rub it, and I put it on there, and the bleeding stops. Okay? Or I put a lot of pressure on the bleeding, and it stops, and I put a bandage on it. In 2 days, I switch the bandages, everything stops, and then it will heal. But think about it. If your child is smoking thyme and they're in an accident, I just gave you an example of gunshots, and I give you an example of salad cuts in the kitchen. But what about those ones that you can't control? You're in a car crash or something happens out there, God forbid, and they have to cut you out of a car and you're bleeding, and they might have to do a blood transfusion. What happens? Bleeding doesn't stop. The anticoagulant properties have been damaged. And then you get to the hospital, they have to give you heparin, warfarin, all the injectable, the IV anticoagulants, and you're still bleeding. What happens when you continue bleeding, people? You die. Prepare yourself for emergencies. Don't alter your body chemistry by smoking a herb you don't know anything about. Watch your children very carefully. I know what some of you are saying. There's a thin line between teaching somebody something and preventing it. A 1 minute euphoria, it's not a big high. A 1 minute euphoria can change your entire life. Talk to your children about smoking thyme. Thanks for listening. I'm Dr. Kemi.